Hey guys, welcome back once again to the Golf Podcast presented by Golficity. We have in a minute, we're going to be bringing Jeremy Stone, who's with the Vokey team, on to talk about an experience that Mike and I recently had, which we're going to dive into in a second. We went to Manchester Lane. There's just so much more to that place is incredible. But we kind of wanted to dive into this idea and get an idea of like, when is it time to replace your wedges? Very often, Mike, you, me, like we get DMs from people, we get messages in the Facebook group, we get private messages on Facebook of people kind of asking us equipment stuff, especially since we got our full bag fitting. And one question that comes up is, when it's time. Is it time for me to, change my equipment and make a replacement? So one aspect of that, and we've talked about it before, like wedges being so important, the short game, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you've heard us talk about that, week in and week out. So that's something that we've kind of did a little experiment with, and we will dive into that more in a minute, because what Jeremy will tell you is he's like a wealth of information around this, and we're going to dissect some of the numbers. Before we do though, Mike, I think one thing I want to just quickly mention, because it's just going to be in a couple days as of when this podcast is coming out, our first ever meetup. You want to tell the guys the details of that?
Yeah, I'm actually excited about this one. It's at a place that you and I know pretty well. We're going to do the meetup indoors at the Players Club in Paramus. And for those of you who live in the area know, it's, one of the premier indoor simulator places. I think there's like 10 bays there, Frank, with place. TVs. It's huge. We're going to have some fun, and we're going to open it up 100% free. If you're in, the area, we got some guys driving down, an hour, a lot of people do live local. We didn't know that, and that's great. Looking forward to meeting a lot of you. Come down. We're going to eat some good food. We're going to play some golf. We're going to do some fun things, Frank. I'd love the closest to the pin long drive. We're going to see who could take those prizes home. You and I are going to do a podcast from there and get a lot of the people involved there. It's going to be a fun night. I can't wait. It's going to be August 7th, Wednesday night. So I think this pod drops on August 4th, Sunday. Wednesday night, August 7th of the Northern Trust Week at the Players Club in Paramus, New Jersey. Around 6:30 p.m. is when we're going to kick off.
Yeah, 6:30, I think, till probably 8. So it's not going to be a long event, but we're going to have a lot of fun while we're there. And the other thing we're going to try to do, Mike, we may even, if we're still working out the logistics, if we can make this happen, but we may even do like a little bit of an exclusive sneak peek for the people who are there and let them watch a little bit of the Scotland series.
I love
which gets released in just less than 15 days now. So that's going to be coming out really soon. But you guys have asked for us to do some more of these like meetups, and we've been trying to do it. And this is one way that we're doing it, at least locally here. And as we travel more, we'll try to do more in different locations. But it's a great spot. Like Mike said, lots of simulators there, and it's just going to be something just to get together. For more details, go to the Facebook group, and you'll see right there at the top, there's an announcement with all the details. You can kind of let us know if you're going to be coming or not, but you don't have to. Even if you're hearing this, if you're listening to this on Wednesday morning, like don't worry about, you don't need to RSVP. Just pop in and say hi. Even if you can't make it for the whole thing, like Mike said, we're going to try to do a live podcast from there. We're just going to be there chilling, having fun. That's really all it's about. So if you can make it, swing by. Speaking of having fun, how wild is this? Every time I open my phone and look at this, it's crazy. The Golficity Virtual Open, Mike, is up to 1,253 participants.
It's ridiculous.
It is. I mean, especially when we think back, we're so humbled by it because we set a goal of 500. We're like, we want to get 500 people. Mm-hmm. So the turnout this year has been amazing. It's been so much fun watching people chat about it in the Facebook group. I love that. I love the updates. See people posting pictures about to head out for my tournament round. Even more so, what I really love is seeing people pairing up, like who's in, Milwaukee, who's in Wisconsin, whatever. And people are like, let's meet up and play our round together. So to me, I think the real effect of this and the thing I'm most proud of is how many rounds it's logging, how many people are getting out there and playing, and they're meeting up, they're playing rounds together. You're maybe introducing yourself to new golf buddies, whatever it is. That's what this was about from the start. It was about having fun and getting people out there playing golf. So we appreciate everybody who's been involved. I hope you guys are having as much fun with this as we are, watching the scoreboard, the leaderboard. It's been a blast. And when it all wraps up, we're going to draw out of a hat and announce the winners of all those great prizes we've got. So you still got time. Get in there. Go to golficity.com/open. One little maintenance thing that I want to say here. Make sure, and remember this, When you post your score, you're going to post your gross score, not your net. I know it's kind of a new system for some people. We're using the Peoria system this year. We did that so that people of all skill levels could play. You don't need to have a handicap to get involved. This thing is going to calculate the handicap based on your performance that day. However, if you enter a net score with whatever your handicap is at the moment, you're going to throw the system off. So let's keep it as accurate as we can on that leaderboard. Make sure you guys enter gross scores. All right. I'm sure we'll chat about it a little bit more next week too when we do the podcast from the Players Club. But again, just want to make sure we mention because there's still plenty of times and I'm sure there's a lot more rounds yet to be logged.
Yeah, I'm sure. Frank, before you move on to recap Manchester, because I know we're going to dive into that real quick, I wanted to mention this because this podcast episode is going to come out the week of the Northern Trust. I wanted to let everyone out there know if you're going to be coming to the Northern Trust this year, it's at Liberty National in Jersey City. It's an amazing course, Frank. You and I have been there for the President's Cup and another Barclays 2013. Believe it or not, Frank, that was 2013. We were there when we snapped that photo with Ben Crane. Remember that? That was incredible.
Yeah, that was when he was Bubble Boy that year.
He was Bubble Boy. That was a good year. So we'll be back. We will be there all day Friday. If any of you out there are going to be there, DM us, hit us up. If you see us, shout at us, say hello. We're just there to have some fun. We'll have the big camera, probably taking some photos and just doing some fun things on Instagram. So check us out there.
We're going to be doing a podcast, hopefully, from the media tent.
I was just going to mention that. Hopefully we could do one there. That'd be great. That'd be really cool if we could.
Yeah, and you'll be mulling around on Wednesday too, right?
Wednesday I'm going to be there in and out, probably morning to like early afternoon. Then I'm going to shoot out of there. So I'm going to check out practice day and maybe do some other fun stuff while I'm there.
You know, and I like from our experiences previously at Liberty National, both there and the President's Cup, I feel like it's a good venue for spectators. It's a large course and it's spread out, but I feel like there's a lot of places you can go and make your way around the course and you can see, there's a lot of places where you can kind of even, post up somewhere and see a lot of action. There's a lot of great places to watch tournaments at that course.
I mean, that's just it. I mean, it's built on a landfill. It's the flattest course you'll ever walk.
Right.
So, you walk up on a couple of like little mounds and you could see, like you said, 3 or 4 holes and you can walk the course pretty easy as big as it is. Plus the views of the New York City skyline.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Lady Liberty out there in the water, all that stuff. It's so cool. Definitely check it out. If you're thinking of coming, pick up tickets, come out. It's a great venue.
And there's no way you would know that place is built on a landfill if someone didn't tell you. I mean, it is pure, that place. I'm still jealous of you, Mike. I have not played that course. How many times have you played it now? Twice?
I played it twice.
Yeah. See, come on. This ain't right.
Yeah, this ain't right, man.
But you're right. We did get the invite to play it this year. However, it was the same day as Ironman of Golf and really just didn't want to quit on Ironman. That was just too much fun. So we did that. I'm sure we'll be back to Liberty National to play it another time. But truly, like I said, it's a great course for spectating too. So hopefully you guys do make it out. Like Mike said, shout us. Hopefully we'll get the chance to see you guys. It's going to be kind of crazy Friday, bouncing back and forth and doing the podcast from there. But if we get a chance to meet up, that's what we're always all about for sure. Let's chat about Manchester Lane real quick.
Yes, let's
set the stage a bit because this is where, and you're going to hear us in a moment when we bring Jeremy on the show, we're going to talk a little bit about this experiment we did while we were there, but we actually did a lot of stuff while we were there. So backstory on Manchester Lane. Manchester Lane is located not far at all, like maybe a 5-10 minute drive from the Titleist ball plant up in Acushnet. So we were up there, as you guys may have seen, and you heard us talk about it on the show if you've been with us for a while. We went up to the ball plant. We took the tour last year. Since then, I've seen a lot of you in the Facebook group who've also taken the tour. It is really eye-opening. It's amazing to go see how the Pro V1, the AVX, and the Pro V1X are made. But what I've found fascinating is how much is right there around Titleist HQ. You've got, and it's all within 5 minutes driving. You've got the ball plant there. Then you've got R&D, which is something we still haven't gotten to yet, but it's on our list. Each time we go up there, we spend the full day. There's so much to see. So it's like we're just trying to make it in each trip. But anyway, not far down the road, you have Manchester Lane. Manchester Lane has been a Titleist facility for something like 30 years now, and lots of history there. This is their main testing facility for the ball. So they are testing there 365 days a year. I mean, all year. They've got the robots going, and it was just mind-blowing to us to see the stuff that they tested. I mean, to the point where they wanted to test landing conditions for short game spin. So they realized that a couple things. One, when you hit a green, you're going to create a pitch mark, right? And now that you understand something, this is a scientific study that they're doing. That takes that control away from the study because now you've altered the landing surface that you're trying to measure. Additionally, they're telling us how crazy this gets. It's like some Bryson DeChambeau stuff here. They were saying that if you started an experiment and then went to lunch, and by the time you came back, the grass had grown, right. a microscopic amount, but enough to alter the test that they were like, we had to start over. So it's crazy what they thought of. But one of the things that they thought of, they built 100 yards, not feet, long, perfectly flat green as a landing surface to test these golf balls on. And one thing that we got to do while we were there, we got to try to make a putt across this thing. And how wild was that?
It was insane. It was much harder than it looked.
It really was. So I won't give it away of like the way you have to do it. You'll see it in the videos, and I'm sure we'll post that in the Facebook group. And hopefully you guys get the chance to watch the video of the tour because it's a lot more than we can get into here. But again, the history that's there, the extra tee that they had to build called the Tiger tee when Tiger was on Titleist staff, and they had to back things up because Tiger was hitting drives in the woods and they couldn't measure the ball. It's just incredible. And then the short game facility, and they've just built this, and just to be able to test every aspect, and they can quickly test and turn things around. That's what was so amazing to me. Like if the manufacturing facility or the R&D facility, which are both just down the road, if one of them had questions and they wanted an immediate test, they could literally just have it done in no time because the testing facility is right there too. They would just dial up the test, be like, I need you guys to test this golf ball under these conditions. And it'd be like, boom, they would test it and they get this immediate feedback. So it's just one more piece of the puzzle of what you see, like the care that goes into stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think my favorite part of the whole tour was at the very end when Rich, our tour guide who's in the video, you'll see this part. He basically just says to us, all right, guys, go have fun. And we get to go over to the short game area, which is, you could take a nap out there. It's so pure. Yeah. I mean, wait till you see this thing, the way it just pops on film. We were flying drone in there, and we like so many great things, great camera angles, and really cool. I mean, check it out. It's so cool. I mean, we had so much fun. I mean, we were like kids on a playground. We kept saying it in the video that we had that short game area to ourselves. Nobody else was there. Literally, it was just you and me. And it was great.
It was so cool. Wild. And it's a huge facility. And what's so weird about it is, for as big a facility as it is, it's so hidden. Like, they kept warning us. They're like, listen, follow your GPS. If you have trouble finding it, call us. And we're expecting it to be like some like big, like, gates or something. Right. And it almost looks like they created a fake entrance just to throw you off. That's how ridiculous it is. It's like Bat Cave style entrance. Like, all of a sudden you're like in this like neighborhood, like super residential, just neighborhood. You turn left down this one street. It says dead end, and it just gets tighter and tighter. And then it goes into the woods, and it's tree lined. And then there's like this random, like broken down shed, which looks like a stage prop. It looks like they put it there to throw you off. And then you just like kind of like turn, and like boom, there's this like unassuming gate, and then you start this like long drive in, and it just opens up to this amazing facility. And that's why we had to get the drone shot too, so you could see from the air. You realize how big this place is, and it was just like hidden. Like, imagine like having something like that hidden in your backyard somewhere. That's what it was like. It was like residential, and then all of a sudden like woods, and this thing carved out into the middle of the woods. It was wild.
And how about those robots?
Yeah, dude. I mean, the fact that they can take those robots and dial them up to do anything they want was so amazing to me. They were like, they could take the launch conditions of any PGA Tour pro, from what we know from their TrackMan, and then just dial the computer to do the exact same thing just to see how the ball performs.
That's insane. It was insane. So cool to watch.
It really is. And it just keeps going. They just keep hitting. They said the one machine had hit over 4 million golf balls across its lifetime.
Jeez.
It's so wild. But anyway, I want to bring Jeremy on the show. I want to dive into this. I want to talk a little bit about what we found when what we did was we compared some old wedges to new ones to get an idea of like what's that tipping point, when is it time to replace your wedges? And when is it like, even though we've all got that like one old faithful, like this wedge that you love and you're very comfortable hitting it, but when is that point that it might sneak up on you that it's actually starting to become a disservice? Even though you're comfortable with hitting it because you're familiar, there might be this, the performance aspect of it might be slipping away on you and you not realize it. So that's what we had kind of tested. So Mike, what do you say we quickly shout out our sponsors, throw them some love, and then we'll just bring Jeremy right on the show.
Yeah, and before I do that real quick, I just want to mention this before I forget it. You've been throwing out this line for a couple weeks now. You've been saying golf is hard enough. Don't swim against the current.
True.
And I love that, fresh grooves, man. So I'm excited to talk about
it. Fresh grooves,
so
clean grooves, just taking care of your equipment, man.
Exactly. And that's a good segue into this read here. So just big thanks to Titleist. Wedges, we're talking wedges and they wear out. We know it's just a fact. I mean, we hit our wedges everywhere. Right? Bunkers, fairways, rough, when we warm up on the range, just messing around outside. Over time, those grooves, they're just going to wear down, whether you think about it or not. So, we're going to talk about that tonight and how you could be hurting your golf game all in this episode. Frank, the question often asked about wedges, get this, is how do you spin it like a tour pro, right?
Yeah, everybody wants to spin it like a tour pro. That's right.
Pull it back on that string. Yeah. It's so cool to look at on TV. Well, the first step, just like you said, treat your equipment like a tour player. That means you got to have the right golf ball and you got to have the freshest groove. So visit Vokey.com, Vokey, Vokey.com to see the spin research that Bob Vokey and his team have conducted. And you'll understand how grooves wear over time much better after checking that out. After 75 to 100 rounds of golf, you owe it to yourself to test your grooves and make sure you're still getting the maximum spin from those wedges. So again, visit a fitter or go to Vokey.com, check it out for a spin test yourself. And I'm excited to talk to Jeremy about that tonight for sure.
Me too. And side note, I was on the Vokey website today because I'm just experimenting with some different gapping. I think I might throw a 52 in the bag. And it is true. The website is on point. It'll like walk you through step by step. If you need a little bit of help with your grind or whatever, or just picking a wedge, it's awesome. Also, guys, big thank you to ShotScope. If you've been listening to the show, the ShotScope V2 is the world's smartest golf watch. And you guys know we wear them and you see them in every video that we do. We're always wearing them when we're out there, as well as the stats. You guys see in a lot of the vlogs we do where we overlay the stats, how far the ball went, stuff like that. All that data is stuff that you guys can gather too. We're doing it all through the V2 and we're just basically taking screenshots of our app and overlaying them in the video. All the stats are there. They've got over 40,000 courses. They've got hundreds of stats and it really does help your game. I've seen my handicap come down in the past year because I've been working on the things that the ShotScope system tells me I need to work on. So two things stood out from ShotScope and playing the old course and watching the video back and doing that editing. One, like I said, the GPS distances to the front, back, middle. Some of those greens, Mike, how wild was it?
They were like
60-yard difference from the front to the back of the green and some of those greens. So we're able to do that. We're able to see that. You just glance down. Don't have to worry about like pulling out a phone or anything like that. You glance down at your watch. You've got front, back, middle. You hit one button on the watch. You've got your distances to all your hazards. It's all right there. That's happening while you're out there. After the fact, all the stats are being logged. The watch basically, it works with the tags on your sticks and it just GPS tags every shot. So I was able to go back and I looked at number 17, the road hole.
Yeah.
It was so wild looking at that shot line. It literally goes over the whole distance of the hotel. So it was just so cool to be able to pull that back up.
You have that forever.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a memento for me. Not only is it a learning thing, I learned from the stats, it's a memento. So guys, all the data for your golf game, it's right at your fingerprints with the ShotScope V2. You'll help you improve. Join the revolution. Get yourself a ShotScope V2 for only $159. It's an incredible deal. Just visit shotscope.com/Golficity to grab that deal. And finally, guys, thank you to FootJoy. Speaking of which, you guys saw us wearing that at the old course. It's the #1 shoe in golf, and FootJoy has introduced a new version of the hottest shoe on tour, the new Pro SL. The Pro SL is the most popular shoe in golf shops and on most worldwide professional tours. It combines soft, comfortable leather upper with a midsole, outsole system that features 3 distinct layers for comfort. They got perimeter stability. Everybody wants that stability. We talk about rotation, right? As well as superb traction with over 200 points of ground contact. Trust me, anybody who's ever slipped during their swing knows how important traction is. So chosen by one of the top 100 ranked players in the world, more than any other shoe, it's your turn to try the Pro SL. Shop now at footjoy.com. All right, Mike, let's dial up Jeremy and bring him on the show. All right, guys, we're very pleased to have Jeremy Stone on the show. He's the director of marketing for Vokey Wedges. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
It's really great to have you, and I'm really been interested in picking your brain after this little test we did, which I'll set up in a moment. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background and what you do with Vokey.
Sure. So I have been with Titleist now for 9 years. I spent the first 4.5 years of my career in the Fairhaven office, our headquarters in Massachusetts. And there I was managing market research and international advertising, and had the opportunity, was called in 2015. They were restructuring the club's business, and they said, look, we need someone to come out and lead the marketing and business effort for the Vokey brand. And that's just one of those calls you get. It's a no-brainer. It was incredibly easy for me as a diehard golfer and just a fan of everything golf and knowing Bob Vokey's name to say, yes, please, I'd love to come out and do that. It's just a fantastic opportunity. So I've been doing that for 4.5 years now. Joined in 2015, and it's awesome. I get to work with Voke. I get to build the marketing strategy, the sales strategy, and spend time thinking about how to tell his story.
And right there, you said working with Voke. Every point of contact we've ever had in speaking with Titleist, they have nothing but the best things to say about him. He is a great guy, isn't he?
He's unbelievable. We just celebrated his 80th birthday, and most of the guys, we had a bunch of tour players shoot a video where they were like, hey, can you just wish Bob a happy birthday? And they were all happy to do it. But then we told them he was 80. And I think we had almost 1,000 batting average of them saying, wait a minute. He's not that old. This spry and happy and energetic, enthusiastic. It is so incredible to work with a guy who has the stature he has, but the humility to come to work every day looking to get better. And I think it's so fun for me to get to learn from him and his authenticity. And it's so fun to get to learn from him, obviously, about wedges, but there's so much more to learn about how he just approaches every day. It's unbelievable. Can't describe it.
It really is. I mean, you almost have to meet him to really understand it. And the few times we've worked with him, he's just an incredible individual. But okay, so let me set up this stage a little bit of what we did that kind of led to the numbers we're going to talk about here. So one big thing, and we mentioned this earlier in the show, but one big thing that Mike and I have had is, especially since getting our full bag fitting and retooling our clubs last year, we get a lot of people who message us, and a question that's kind of very common is, when is it time to make a change? When is it time to upgrade? Should I do it now? Should I pull the trigger now? Should I wait? So that we're kind of like looking for that point that's a little bit less subjective, and it's just a little bit more concrete, that it's like, okay, it is time to make an investment. And one big area where we've had a lot of success was with the new Vokeys and putting the new wedges in the bag. And Mike and I went through a full fitting. We went through the gapping. We did, bounce, grind. We did the whole thing, and we've seen incredible improvement because of it. Prior to that, we had been playing just kind of a hodgepodge of wedges. In fact, we did the video while we were at Manchester Lane and testing this. It was almost bordering on embarrassing to show some of the stuff we were playing before that. But then I said, look, I'm not embarrassed, because I know golfers, and I know there are a lot of other guys out there. They're the same thing. They've probably got a wedge or two in that bag that have been there forever. A lot of us will buy the latest driver. It's exciting. Let's go get the whatever. We'll get a set of irons every couple of years. But sometimes maybe it's because like nostalgic, maybe it's because it's like old reliable, but we hold on to a wedge or two in our bag. But we said, when do we know if it's time to make the change? So what we basically did is Mike had an old 52. I had a 60 that was about as old as me. And we took them out there, we put them on the TrackMan, we hit them, and then we hit them in comparison to a brand new wedges. I mean, pulled the plastic off and hit them. And what we saw, and Jeremy, we sent you some of the numbers so you could take a look at them too. But what we saw was a pretty dramatic difference in things like spin. Just quick wrap up for Mike, hitting from the tee box or from a tight lie, we saw about 1,000 more RPM on average that he picked up with the fresh grooves. And then from the rough, we saw it even more amplified, 1,500 RPM difference when Mike was hitting that 52. So I wanted to pick your brain and see what your take is, on the data, but also this question, like, how does someone know it's time and what makes it time to make a change?
Yeah, it's a great one. And the beauty of all of this is, for us, is it's all performance driven, right? I live in the world of marketing. I understand a lot of folks, when we say, here's when you should replace your wedges, they're going to say, well, of course the marketing guy for Vokey wants you to replace your wedges. But the reality is, this is one of those scenarios where I don't tell you to go buy them. I tell you to go test them. And there's a big difference there, because it's your game. And I think what we saw in your numbers here from the old wedges that you had, that honestly is very common. Everyone's got old reliable that's gotten them out of a lot of jams. It's hard to replace that wedge, but sometimes people don't realize that it can be hurting their game. And so it's pure performance is when you want to think about replacing the wedges. And I think just like the experience you had, the access to a launch monitor has never been greater. I mean,
That's
you
true.
think of all the stores out there, all the fitters out there, the Titleist Thursdays, the access that the everyday golfer has to go test their wedges and test their grooves has never been greater. And you kind of owe it to yourself to say, gee, I wonder what my wedges look like, and I wonder if it is time. And we can certainly walk through what you've experienced, and I think some of the indicators we see on tour and in fittings that really drive to, all right, it's time. I've got to rethink things.
And you know what you said is, it's a good point, that the ability to get on a TrackMan somewhere is very high at this point, whereas years ago it wasn't. And now, as you said, even a lot of big box stores, a lot of even just a lot of driving ranges and things like that. We're seeing these facilities, simulators, indoor simulators, where they have the TrackMan and you can just kind of rent time, so to speak, half hour, whatever, and get out there and try it. So what we had even said in the video too, which is going to be coming out shortly, where we're still working on producing that, but ultimately what we said was, you do yourself the service of going and trying it. Put your own wedges to work and see what kind of spin you're getting out of them. But aside from that hard data, what else is it, maybe subjectively, if I'm just going out there and playing with a wedge, are there signs and symptoms to look for that kind of tell you, all right, even though I don't know my exact spin numbers, I know something's up? What would you be looking for in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. All of this research came about. We take our cues from the tour, and the things that Aaron Dill, our Vokey wedge rep on tour, talks about, and Voke would say he sees when he does amateur fittings or tour player fittings, and all of your listeners can pay attention to, is the golf ball launching higher? I think the first indicator is you're trying to hit that low controlled flighted wedge, and you just can't do it anymore. You used to be able to do it, and all of a sudden the ball just wants to jump straight up in the air. That's indicator number one, because now all of a sudden you've got a really high lofted club, the golf ball sliding up the face, launch angle is going to go way up. And we saw that in your data as well. Your launch angle came down, 3, 4, 5 degrees in some instances when you were hitting the golf ball with fresh grooves. So if suddenly the golf ball is shooting up in the air when you're trying to flight it, I know the first thing we as golfers do is say, I must have just not swung. I must not have hit that one right.
Yeah.
But a lot of times if it's happening over and over again, it may not be a you problem. It's likely time to look at the equipment and run a test there. So it's flight. And then I would say if suddenly your standard numbers, you're not hitting your number anymore. We get conditioned with drivers to think that high launch, low spin creates more distance. But that's because it's 9.5, 10.5 degrees of loft.
Right.
When you're hitting a 56 or 52 degree wedge, there's so much loft that if suddenly you're losing the friction from the grooves, that golf ball's going up, and that energy transfer is not going out, it's going up. And so your stock 100-yard club, boy, if it's only going 90 or 95 and you're just wondering why you've lost those 5-10 yards, could just be because your grooves are shot.
I'm kind of laughing because I'm thinking about it. It is true how quick we go to blaming ourselves. I think in my own experience, like it's not my first thought to think equipment. I think like, oh, what am I doing wrong? Like, Mike, look at my swings. Am I doing something wrong? But you're right. It's that repeatable over time. It's like, yeah, maybe it's something to look at here. So just for some of our newer golfers who listen, who maybe, they're starting to grasp the idea, but not quite understanding how spin affects things. So the most basic fundamental physics you're saying is as grooves become worn out, they're gripping the ball less. And as you said, it's just kind of sliding up the face. That's why it's launching higher.
Exactly. So when you think about striking the golf ball, club's coming down, you're making impact. And at some point, the golf ball stops sliding up the face and it goes out and leaves the club face. It's obviously a very minute amount of time, but it does happen. And so when you have fresh grooves, it happens really quickly. And so that golf ball launches out on a nice low trajectory controlled with a lot of spin, that low one hop and stop. But all of a sudden, over time, as those grooves wear out, particularly those bunker clubs, because you're literally sandblasting the face,
right?
There's going to be less friction. The golf ball is going to subtly roll up the face a little bit. So those two indicators are golf ball rolls up the face. You start to see the flight go up, the launch go up right away, and you're going to lose some distance. And obviously, if suddenly you're playing some greens, you're hitting to a front pin, and you just don't have that check anymore, and you haven't changed anything, but you're still expecting the same thing. Obviously, that's an obvious indicator.
Yeah. And again, speaking to all levels of golfers, sure, some of your better golfers, they're going to understand, they're going to see, because they're so used to seeing their ball check. As soon as it doesn't, they're going to be like, okay, that's an indicator. But I think even this goes to all levels of golfer, but even sliding down the scale to some of our newer golfers, another question that we get hit with all the time is, what can I do to improve consistency of my game? So we've done episodes on that. We've talked about it from an instructional standpoint, but that really for me was the biggest eye opener in doing this test. So I thought, okay, intuitively, I'm looking at this club, my older club, I can see the grooves are worn down, and this thing is just it's not going to grab the ball the way this brand new, fresh, face will. But I thought, if I kind of had a hypothesis going in, it's be like, you're going to have low spin all the time with this one and higher spin with this one. But what I instead saw was that the spin numbers were erratic on the worn out wedge, and they were very tight and consistent on the newer wedge. So it seemed as though it was like sometimes it was gripping it, sometimes it wasn't. What that translated to me anyway, hitting that 60, just over and over, I was noticing the newer one was landing more or less the same distance every time. The other one was jumping around. So sometimes I have it further and then closer. And if you're thinking about that as going after a pin, that's the difference between probably 1 and 2 putt almost every time. So what is it that causes that like as this club ages, it seems to get less consistent? Is that right? Is it weird wear patterns or what is it that causes that?
Yeah. So forgive me, I'm going to get a little groove geeky on you here. Let's talk about originally like what grooves are for, right? So we all know if you have a perfect lie in the fairway, we see similar spin numbers off of a set iron pitching wedge or a Vokey designed pitching wedge, even though the grooves were designed and cut differently. The reason is you're making perfect impact. The golf ball and the groove edge, there's really nothing in between those two things. So the impact is pretty pure. Really what grooves are designed to do is when you have stuff coming between the golf ball and the groove edge, sand, water, grass, whatever it may be, pine straw, wherever you find yourself hitting a wedge shot, and we find ourselves everywhere, that's what the groove is designed to do. And so it's meant to and is designed to really channel away all that stuff so that it can get either deep down into the groove or it can channel it away from the golf ball so that you're really designing the groove so that the golf ball meets the groove edge every time as cleanly as possible. And so if you just take, think about two different groove designs. If you've got a really shallow groove and a really deep groove and you hit it out of the rough and you got a bunch of grass between the golf ball and the groove, you need that grass to go down deep into that groove edge. And so if you can have a deeper groove, You can get the grass down in there, and that way the golf ball hits the groove edge, not a bunch of grass and then the groove edge. So net, what it means is you want the golf ball to hit the groove edge, not a bunch of debris in between. And fresh grooves let you do that because of the design. Worn out grooves are not nearly as effective. It's just like treads on a tire. You're not nearly as grippy on the road when it's raining if you're driving around in bald tires. The depth of that tread is super critical because it's designed to channel that water away.
And that's why we saw with Mike's, especially from the rough, that differential jumped up even more because you had that extra, interaction with the rough. But another thing you said there that kind of it kind of piqued my interest was when you said the strike. You're saying like the clean strike. This is something that I kind of come back to more and more. And this is something I've learned a lot over the past year with numbers of things we work with, whether it be the ball, the equipment, whatever it may be. A lot of times I think the mindset is that there's a certain stuff that's for your better golfers. Like better golfers should play better clubs. Better golfers should play better balls. Better golfers should go for these fittings. But the reality that I find in every fitter I've worked with, Kevin Sprecher, some of the other, they find that it's the guys more like us. You're more average golfers who get more of a result out of the equipment. In so much as like a great golfer can almost make anything work, right? So I think about like my consistency of strike just in general, forget even the lie. My consistency of strike is not as good as somebody who's a scratch golfer. So in that way too, it would actually, and then I'm just thinking this through as we're talking about it, this fresh grooves is going to help me even more because even on my less pure strikes, I'm at least gripping it a little bit more. So in that way, it like actually works towards like, okay, your golfers who are not as good, they're going to want even benefit more from having fresh equipment. Is that line of thinking correct?
Yeah. When you think about what's important in wedge play, it's consistency, right? I've got to be able to hit those numbers I know I need to be able to hit. We all lay up to a number at some point, 90, 100, whatever that magic number is. You need that consistency, and you're exactly right. That's why fitting is so critical because it can help you understand your numbers. But then also, as you mentioned, you're hitting from a variety of areas, and we all are. In fact, those of us a little bit less skilled than others, we're going to find ourselves in the rough, the sand, the pine straw, wherever else a little bit more often than the better.
Right, that's so true too.
Makes grooves, if you think about it that way, more critical for all of us. And between fitting and fresh grooves, you can't mention it enough, the role it plays in consistency. And you're right. We've got a lot of grinds. I understand they can be confusing. I love that you guys have talked about the importance of fitting because it really talks about, look, I could give Jordan Spieth any one of our grinds in a 60, and he's a darn good wedge player. He'll figure it out. Right. Unfortunately, for the rest of us, to be consistent, to do what we need to do, we need one that can kind of help us on our worst day. And so we always like to say, look, you're not good enough to not get fit because it's really going to help you figure out on your not so good days.
Yeah. And it's like you said earlier, like we all want to like spin it like a tour pro and whatever. And we're all out there like doing our best on our technique, watching YouTube videos and searching it. How do I spin it like a tour pro? But then we're out there trying to do that with equipment that's just like I said, like it's just like pushing a rock uphill. You gotta also help yourself in that way. And I'm just kind of repeating that because I'm thinking to myself how many times I overlooked that, especially in my own journey. I was always trying to blame myself. It's what I'm not doing, but not realizing that I'm not setting myself up for success with the right kind of equipment. So.
Well, think of the compromises we see a lot of golfers make so often. The question you asked is a great one. It's how do I spin it like a tour pro? Well, as you mentioned, the very first thing you've got to do before you make a swing, before you work on your technique with a coach, is treat your equipment like a tour pro. Yeah. If that's your goal, and I think it's not everyone's goal, and I get that, but if your goal is to spin it like a tour pro, and you're looking up YouTube videos how to spin it like a tour pro, starts with the gear, and that means the wedges have to have fresh grooves. We see it all the time on tour, and quite honestly, the golf ball has to be designed to spin. Yeah. You show up with worn grooves and a golf ball that has a rock hard cover that's a distance golf ball. Kevin Sprecher's a phenomenal coach and a phenomenal fitter, but even he's not going to get you with that equipment to spin it like a tour pro.
Right. It's true. You got to set yourself up for success there. So I mean, it's just like I said, it was a very eye-opening experience in general for me. And it just kind of got that feel for it. And just so I know, just kind of roundabout idea, I know you could obviously speak more to Vokey than other brand wedges, but what is the longevity that I should expect? So I know we talked about what to look for when, it might be going wrong. And we say, if you're questioning if they're worn out, go and test them on a TrackMan. But is there like kind of a window to timeline wise where I should say like, okay, this is the time I should start looking at testing it or looking at seeing if I'm losing performance?
Yeah, there's absolutely some guidelines. And I think here's the reality. I'm the Vokey guy, but I'm here to tell you all wedges wear out. We spend an awful lot of time trying to figure out how to make them last as long as possible without sacrificing feel. It's absolutely critical to wedge play. So we'll certainly stand by the durability of our grooves, but they're all going to wear out over time. What we've seen in our testing is, look, you really need to start thinking about it around 75 to 100 rounds of golf. It doesn't equate. I can't tell you every 3 years because your 3 years isn't equal to my 3 years in usage. And so 75 to 100 rounds of golf, I think you owe it to yourself to go to a big box shop, find your way into, a superstore, find your way into a fitter with a TrackMan or a launch monitor, and always start with the go-to wedge or your bunker club. The thing we've learned from the tour is wedges don't wear out all at the same rate. On tour, average usage, they go through 4 to 6 lob wedges a year, maybe 3 or 4 sand wedges a year, 2 gap wedges, and 1 pitching wedge. The same is true for us. We've got that wedge we go to when we got to get out of trouble. We have our favorite bunker club. Those are the ones you likely warm up with. Those are the ones you're using more often. Logically, those are the ones that are going to wear out first. And so we're not saying it's a wholesale change at 75 to 100 rounds, but you certainly owe it to yourself to test that go-to wedge at that time.
Yeah, and like you said, you're using it more often, so that means it's a bigger part of your game, which means it's going to result in a better performance to replace that club. That's another thing. We get that question often. People say, I'm on a budget. I'm going to get fit. Like, what do I get fit for? And we've been starting to like really dive into that. I've been telling people like one putter, we talk about how much of the game is that. And then after that, I dive into wedges because Mike and I, through the past couple of seasons, we've been working hard on tracking our stats. And one thing we've been tracking is club usage. And I just see the club usage across my wedges is just, it's high, I mean, it's true. And if you think about it as a golfer of our skill level, 11, 12 handicap, we're not hitting every green in regulation. We're scrambling more. So there's a lot. We're using those wedges for those shorter shots, chip shots, bunkers, greenside bunker shots. So there's a lot of stuff like that I think that it comes into play. So you realize how much they are scoring clubs and how much you rely on them. So that's why I put emphasis on them.
Do you know how many greens in reg are you hitting?
I can look it up right now. Pull up my data. I think when I last checked, it was somewhere around 30%.
Like 32, 33-ish.
Yeah, it was somewhere around 30. So I would go around about that number.
You're hitting 6 out of 18, right? And so that means 12 times you're needing a wedge. And oh, by the way, that doesn't take into account your approach shot might have been a wedge to begin with.
Yeah, right.
So, that's an awful lot of wedge play. And so, unfortunately, you're right. You hit the nail earlier, which is a lot of folks say, well, I'm just not good enough for a wedge fitting. And that's a bummer because it can highlight spin that can create consistency issues and certainly the grinds, which I know you guys have experienced as well.
Well, that's just it. And we're telling more and more of the newer golfers, we're saying like, focus on scoring. Like everybody wants to hit that big ball off the tee, but then when you start to realize how much the scoring is around the green, it's like put both your practice and your equipment kind of prioritization in putting and wedges and stuff like that. And if you can learn that part of the game, man, that's where you start to see that score come down. It may not be the most glorious as puring one down, down the middle of the fairway, but man, it does make a difference on that scorecard.
Absolutely. Well, I love listening to Voke. He talks about it all the time. He says, look, not all of us have the strength, the flexibility, the skill set to hit a 300-yard drive. But the good news is I'll bet every one of your listeners can hit the ball 50 yards. And that means we can all be pretty darn good from 50 and in or 100 and in. It's not a speed thing that prevents us from doing that. Suddenly it just becomes, are we putting in the practice? Are we putting in the time? And are we spending the energy to make sure the equipment fits our game?
So true. Really great stuff. Mike, did you have anything else you wanted to hop in there with?
You know, as I'm learning so much from listening to you guys talk about this, and by the way, going through it, I mean, it was an amazing experience, Jeremy, just going through it and like the numbers. I'm staring at this sheet as you guys are talking. By the way, it's blowing my mind. There's just so much.
So
data.
much here. I know.
You know, and I'm looking at them, I'm saying, wow, it's amazing. You know, forget about all groove wear aside. It's amazing how much spin you lose when you hit out of the rough. And as a 12 handicap amateur golfer, it's just one thing I never think about or have thought about ever out there. It's just so cool. Like, you know, when you're standing over your ball in the rough, you're saying, okay, I'm probably going to lose distance. But I don't realize that this ball might not even hold this green anymore. I'm not thinking like that. So, you know, for me, I'm just staring at all this data across the screen right here and I'm loving it. It's cool.
Hey, Mike, you know what it reminds me of? This is kind of funny. Remember when this speaks to fittings. Remember with your old wedges when you would actually hope that you were in the rough because you preferred to hit your wedge out of the rough, right? Because from a tight lie, it would dig in because we didn't realize you were playing the wrong bounce.
Yep, exactly.
And now you realize you prefer the tight lie as long as you got the right bounce in your hand, you prefer the tight lie because you can generate more spin and stop the ball better.
I know, and my confidence in those tight lies through the roof right now.
Right.
So
and it was the other way.
You guys think is it the rough that most surprised you when you did this test? I guess what was your big aha moment? What was the big takeaway for you guys? Each getting to hit a couple of different wedges, 52s, 60s. Was there a moment where the light bulb really clicked for the first time doing this test?
Mike, you go ahead. If you had something first, I'll tell you mine in a second.
For me, it was things that I noticed, like obviously noticed, that I don't normally see out on the course, like that spin. I was seeing the ball land and pull back with these fresh grooves. And I was saying, wow, that's pretty incredible because I don't normally get that out there at all. Whereas, you know, and another quick point of that was just the dispersion of the ball off of the old club was ridiculous. You know, it was night and day. And then the last point I'll make is that the feel of the club at strike was a difference for me. You know, I know the grips were different. One was worn out, one was a fresh grip on a new club. But even the feel at strike of the ball connecting with the club, for some reason, had a difference in feel for me. So those were pretty eye-opening.
And I think for me, like we talked about consistency, but because it was like right in a row, like hit 5 with this club and then 5 with that club. So there was like, we're trying to take as many variables out, like make it as controlled as possible. And then just immediately seeing like I said, the landing area and how much different it was as far as distance with the old wedge versus the new wedge. I think any other time, if it wasn't on a TrackMan and I wasn't looking at this, I would just blame myself. Like I'd be like, okay, you know, that's just me. That's my skill level. I'm not super consistent to drop it in the same spot every time. So I'm not making the same strike and whatever. And there's a certain variable, a certain amount of that's true, but I'm like, I'm just not making the same strike. And that's why it's not traveling the same distance. But then, you know, kind of peeking behind and then looking at the TrackMan data, which is nice because it's right there, immediate feedback. I'm like, wait a minute, look at these spin numbers with the old one. It was all over the place. And then with the new one, it was kind of the same, like, or very within a negligible difference. And then I realized like, okay, well, maybe it's not so much me. Maybe that inconsistency was because of the fact that it was different spin every time. And I realized like I hit 5 and then I hit 5 of the other ones. I wasn't changing my strike dramatically, yet I was getting different amounts of spin. So it was before where I always thought that was my fault. Now I'm realizing that there's a piece of this that's not. That was what was eye-opening to me.
Yeah, and that's right. You know, hey, look, we're not going to be here to say this is the magic bullet. You're exactly right. It's just a piece of it. But I'm glad you got to do that. I think it's certainly great that you were able to kind of put in the time and really bring this to life for everyone because it is a critical part. It's how we score.
Yeah.
You want to shoot lower scores. Short games are a really great place to look and spend some time and energy.
Yeah, and you're right. No magic bullet because trust me, I can make any club look bad. My goal is more so I'd rather have a club that's going to perform well, you know, 8 out of 10 shots versus 5 out of 10 because I'm eliminating at least some other factor. You know, there's still going to be the Frank factor. The Frank can miss a shot. You know what I mean? But I'm saying across that span, right back to back, hit 5 with this, hit 5 with that. The variation in the distances was just right in front of my face. So that's where it showed me that there's something more to this than just what I'm doing. So
nice. Yeah. And Vogue talks about it all the time. He says, look, good wedge design, it should absolutely produce what you expect when you make a good swing. But if we get the right one in your hands, it should protect you a little bit, like you're talking about those tight lies on a bad swing. And that consistency is critical, and I love that you got to see that. I love it came true. I love that you spent the time and really saw it all come to life for you, which was wonderful.
We really did. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and kind of decompress and look at these numbers a little bit, because for us, some of that stuff becomes a little bit overwhelming at times. Like Mike said, we're staring at this huge spreadsheet of all the, the launch angles and it's just like, it's good to have somebody with your experience to be able to dive in and tell us, okay, why are these things happening? And I especially appreciate you taking the time to explain it from that physical standpoint of what the grooves do and why they do it, because we know we've got a lot of new golfers who listen to the show. And I think just understanding how your equipment works makes you a little bit better golfer, just because you just kind of intuitively use it a little bit better when you know what it's doing and what it's designed to do. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us about all this today.
Yeah, happy to do it. Happy to help support what you guys have going on, bringing it to life for the everyday golfer, because I know lots of folks listening sometimes have a bunch of questions, and they're certainly coming to you for those answers a lot of the time. So if we can help in any way, you just let us know.
We always appreciate that. All right, Jeremy, it's been great chatting with you. And like I said, appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today.
Happy to do it.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Jeremy.
All right, so another one of those instances where I just love to get the experts on and just kind of nerd out and just dive in deep into whatever it may be. Like this is an example of that, where we got a chance to go out there and test something, and obviously what came out of it was barrels of data, stuff that we would never even be able to get into it. But being able to kind of pick the expert's brain on it, why did this happen? So being able to do that with Jeremy, I think, I always have fun doing those types of conversations.
It's really great. And I wanted to mention this. We've been working with the team over at Titleist now for over a year. And what I've noticed is everybody there, in whatever department they work with, are so passionate about the product that they are in charge of. Right. And it comes out of the wealth of knowledge that they present. And just, we spoke with Jeremy on the phone before this podcast a week ago, heading into that Grooveware video, just to talk to him about some things and pick his brain, and just the knowledge that he gave us then, breaking down the stats tonight, and then, running into him. It's just great to see. And it was a wealth of knowledge, and it was an awesome test to do. And I'm glad he came on and dissected it, because it did open my eyes.
And that's just it. Everybody on the team has been incredibly accessible and just kind of there to answer these questions we have. Right. A lot of this stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it's us saying hey, we really want to do this. And the fact that, knock on wood, they have yet to really say no to our requests, that in itself amazes me. But then when they're willing to jump on board and talk about it more, that's what's really cool. Even just thinking back to be hey, we'd love to come up and visit the ball plant. You guys mind? Yeah, we do tours. Come on up. You know what I mean? Or when we were even this, I kind of love to go to Manchester Lane and hit some wedges. What do you guys think? And they're yeah, come up and do it. And matter of fact, let's, Jeremy's available if you guys have any questions. And it's just that's awesome. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's stuff that on our own, as we talked about, we can go down to a TrackMan and we can look at it and we can hit the one and the other and look at the spin like we were suggesting you guys do. But then being able to have somebody like Jeremy, to answer the questions, okay, Jeremy, this is what I saw, but why? That's valuable to me. So I'm glad we were able to have him on the show. I'm glad we were able to go over that, because I'm sure just as we learned a lot from this process, I'm hoping that you guys out there who are listening are able to pick up something and learn something from it too. So as I kind of end every show saying, we also want to hear from you guys. So if you've had a chance to do this, maybe you jump down to one of the big box stores and hit your wedges and hit it versus something, a demo club that's new. Some demo clubs get pretty beat up, but maybe if you can get a fresh club and try that and see what kind of a difference it makes for you, let us know, screenshot the TrackMan numbers, post them in the Facebook group. Because I'd love to see that, or just in general, your experience. Do you have an old faithful wedge that you've been using for a long time? What's your thoughts on it? It creates a certain degree of familiarity and comfort for you. That's terrific. But do you think is it getting old? Is it maybe time to replace it? Are you in that debate? Because we all are. Some of us just don't want to let it go. So I want to hear it. Let us know. Let us know in the Facebook group. Post that. and we'll get a little conversation going about it. And like I said, we'll have a visual piece to this too, because we filmed obviously that entire test that we did while we were up there at Manchester Lane. We're just working on getting all of that together into a nice video for you guys. And when we do, we'll release it and you guys can see kind of visually, like I said, what happened when we did that test, because it really was eye-opening being there, and we can chat about it here, but sometimes it's just great to see. So we'll have that for you soon. Mike, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, man. Looking forward to getting out on the links with you this week, man. I can't wait.
That's right. We're playing alternate shot this week, aren't we?
Yeah. And all of the stuff we have going on, we completely forgot. So start gearing up.
Gearing up. You guys asked for it, which, by the way, huge milestone. Thank you to every single one of you, because we just went over 20,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which is something we've really just been focusing on the last 18 months, is just like kind of like bringing you guys along in video form for some of our experiences. And can't tell you how much we appreciate every one of you who subscribe and especially comment on the videos and have helped bring some of these ideas to life. Because when we did a couple of these fun challenge videos, this is one that we're doing by request. You guys had asked for us to do alternate shot. So we're like, yeah, that could be great. That'll be fun. Let's go out and do it. So we're going to go out Friday and play alternate shot, and then we'll have that on the channel, within the next couple of weeks. So thank you to everybody who not only subscribes, but everybody who gives us your week in and week out feedback, because we do really appreciate that. All right. That's everything we have. Go to the show notes by going to golficity.com/episode 282 or checking it out in the free Golficity app. And we'll see everybody again next week.